You are tired of life. Learn to keep your life force alive. Today, there is a secret that modern society tries to hide from you. A quiet psychological effect, one that even the strongest, the most successful, the seemingly happiest faces cannot escape. Carl Jung once warned of something more frightening than ordinary depression. It is the feeling of emptiness, the drifting of the soul between choices that never feel enough. It is living fully in the middle of a noisy city and yet doubting the true value of your own existence. Have you ever woken on a morning filled with sunlight, when everything around you was still warm, still familiar, still intact, but deep in your chest, there was a hollow echo, like you had lost something precious without a name? You still go to work, you still smile, you still blend into the crowd, but inside, there is breathlessness, a loneliness you cannot explain, a weariness that arrives even before the day begins. In America, where people speak endlessly of balance, wellness, and self-care, this feeling has become even sharper. It is called the empty self, a hollow within, where every achievement, every relationship, every pleasure of the body is no more than a thin shell, covering what lies beneath. You still check the newsfeed, answer messages, and push through your deadlines, but it all feels like a coat of paint over wood already scratched. Carl Jung once said, "There is something more terrifying than failure. It is to lose yourself in the very life you thought was yours." If you have ever felt lost in a world that was supposed to be familiar, if you have ever asked, "Does this life hold anything real for me?" then stay here. What you are about to hear is not a quick promise of healing. It is an honest conversation about what society keeps urging you to forget. The need to find your true self again. The need to keep your life force alive. There is a need to discover meaning in every moment you are given. Because sometimes, the most frightening feeling is not pain. It is the echo of emptiness inside the happiness that seemed complete. Only when you dare to face it will your journey back to yourself truly begin. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come from overwork, or from lack of sleep, or from illness. It is the sense that with each passing day, little pieces of your life force quietly leak away, and by the time evening arrives, even if you cannot remember where your energy went, you still feel hollow, drained, with nothing left to give. This tiredness does not show on your face. It hides deep within, like an underground stream only you can feel. Perhaps you have asked yourself why you feel this way, especially when you look around and see everyone else moving, busy and fine. They go to work, they go home, they have all the smart tools of modern life, from phones and watches to robot vacuums. And yet, the more conveniences we collect, the easier it becomes to feel like our lives never really touch anything real. Maybe you have sat in a familiar cafe, listening to an old song, watching people rush past the window, and suddenly noticed your heart felt cold, like a glass of ice water that had long since melted. Have you ever tried sitting still for a moment, no phone, no laptop, just you with yourself, and asked, "Where has all my energy gone?" Carl Jung had a name for this: the loss of life energy, a kind of soul weariness crafted carefully by modern society. Not through great storms, but through a slow, steady rain. Each small compromise, each time you pleased someone instead of speaking your truth, each time you stayed silent when you longed to speak, each night you scrolled until your eyes burned, trying to forget a day that had already slipped through your hands. People say this age lacks nothing but entertainment and solutions. Feeling empty, watch a new sitcom. Feeling restless, order food, post a picture, buy an online course. Even at midnight, you can chat with a program to fill the silence. But have you noticed? The more you try to fill the void, the larger it becomes. It is like pumping air into a leaking balloon. The harder you try, the more your strength disappears. Picture this: a phone plugged into too many cheap chargers, charging and draining at the same time. It still works, it still has power, but it is always unstable, never full, never secure. Your life force is like that. When you do not know where it is flowing, you lose the ability to feel true joy, or even sorrow, in its fullness. In modern America, this feeling is sharper than ever, buried beneath a pace that never stops. City lights never dim, traffic never quiets, Zoom calls never seem to end. Everyone says they are busy, as if busyness proves their worth. But behind everyone I am busy, everyone I am fine, there is a sigh carried home in silence. You might be a young mother, cradling your child while answering work emails, a father pushing through deadlines late into the night, a student far from home, or simply a person trying to stay afloat in a vast, restless city. This emptiness does not come from one great event. It comes from 1,000 small compromises. Each time you abandon a true desire, each time you swallow the word no, each time you bury your feelings to avoid offending someone else. Bit by bit, your life force is drained away from its natural stream, spilling into temporary needs that do not belong to you. Carl Jung once said that, where there is no awareness, fate takes the lead. When you live unconsciously, letting your energy scatter, you are pulled into endless loops you never chose. One day, you look back and you do not know why you are so tired and sad, even though you have everything the world says should make you happy. But do not be afraid of this awareness. In truth, it is the first step toward freedom. When you dare to face this emptiness, without hiding, without blaming, without running to another quick fix, that is the moment you place your hand over your heart and ask, who am I living for? What am I living for? And what remains inside me now? If you have ever paused to ask about the flow of your life force, then you have already stepped onto the first threshold of a greater journey. The journey of rebuilding the inner home. The journey of finding your intact source of life, no matter how much the world around you changes. Do you know that breathless feeling does not come out of nowhere? It is fed by a culture where speed has become a religion. It is almost impossible not to get pulled into the spiral of instant satisfaction when everything around us is designed to stimulate, to solve quickly, to keep us busy with fleeting pleasures. All you have to do is unlock your phone, and a whole universe of entertainment, ads, news, and notifications floods in. From chocolate-covered donuts at the supermarket to endless movies that play all night with a single click. America does this very well, turning distraction into a polished product and turning lack into a common feeling so that everyone believes they must add one more thing to finally feel complete. Notice what happens each time you are tired or sad. The first instinct is not to listen to your feelings, but to consume something. A snack, a scroll through TikTok, an online order, a casual message to someone you have not spoken to in years. Modern society teaches us to soothe every discomfort with fast consumption. Food, experiences, headlines, even fake joy. Everything becomes instant coffee, instant pleasure. Even sorrow wants to be skipped like an ad. Carl Jung once reminded us that the world does not just sell products, it sells illusions of happiness. A banner that shouts, "Only today, this price." A viral clip that says, "You need this to feel complete." One-click checkout buttons. All of it is a subtle game, making sure you never feel enough. You are nudged to add, to upgrade, to refresh yourself constantly, but never given the space to ask, what do I truly need? What do I really want? Think of the last time you sat down to work but got pulled into a stream of short videos. Cats, dogs, trends, one after another. And afterwards, you felt empty, even more restless than before you began. This is not a personal failure. Experts call it the Coolidge effect, the brain addicted to novelty, always hunting for something new, and the more it satisfies, the higher the threshold becomes. The chase multiplies, while your control disappears. Modern life feeds these black holes of entertainment, pulling you farther from your own center. This is no conspiracy. It is simply a society built on scarcity and the fear of missing out. The deeper you get pulled into buying, updating, liking, the further you drift from your own breath. When your life force is scattered in so many directions, you begin to live like an actor on an invisible stage, always keeping your role pleasing to the audience, never knowing when you can finally be yourself. I once looked back at my purchase history in an app and found many things I had never touched, things I could not even remember buying. Often, all it took was a review, and I clicked to own it, only to forget it soon after. A friend told me, sometimes I watch 50 videos in a row. I laugh and then I feel hollow, like I just finished a feast and cannot recall a single dish. Life tricks us into believing the answer always lies outside ourselves. But the more we chase surface solutions, the further we move away from our true selves. Day by day, we pay a quiet tax for these cycles of consumption, our time, our attention, even the clarity of our old dreams. The point of seeing this game is not to feel ashamed. It is to reclaim sovereignty over your life force. When you are awake enough, you notice those hollow feelings, those wandering moments in the sea of information no longer control you the way they used to. It is at that moment you can begin to choose again, what truly fills you and what is only a mask society has placed on your skin. If you have ever wondered, can I live slower, listen to my real feelings, and not be swept away by ads, alerts, and urgent calls from the world outside, then try this. Turn off your devices for one night. Step outside. Take a walk without a destination. Sometimes it is in that quiet pause that you hear the voice within, the voice long buried beneath promises that never belonged to you. And when you are brave enough to see this clearly, the journey of awakening truly begins, not with instant peace, but with the raw discomfort of fog lifting, revealing the darker ground beneath. That is the place I will take you to in the next part of our story. Have you ever spent an evening that seemed ordinary, sitting alone in a lit room, when suddenly a restlessness stirred in your chest? Not hunger, not sleepiness, just a hollow current moving through your heart, leaving behind a sigh you hoped no one would hear. That is the moment when true awakening begins. Not with joy or celebration, as social media likes to promise, but with a quiet discomfort. You feel out of place in the crowd. Casual conversations lose their taste. Parties only remind you of your solitude in a sea of people. There are nights when you scroll through dozens of messages, hundreds of videos, only to realize the old comforts no longer reach you. Carl Jung once said, "No awakening of consciousness comes without pain." When you stop running from your true feelings, forgotten memories return, fears, old wounds, abandoned dreams. You meet them all. Sometimes it is a careless word from family long ago, a scar from childhood, or a midnight dream that wakes you with a racing heart and no one by your side. It is the moment you stop numbing yourself with a film, a drink, or another quick purchase. Instead, you let yourself be still. You breathe with the wave of emotion, letting it rise, letting it fall, in silence. Many believe healing is only light, peace, and positivity. But the truth is, every transformation passes through a zone of turbulence, where the old rises again, where the inner ghosts knock at the door. You may feel anxious, irritable, or even desperate to escape yourself. This is not failure. It is a sign you are moving closer to the depths of who you are. I remember the days I tried to change, to clean up my life. Instead of ease, I felt chaos. Old sorrows returned all at once, like a long-closed room suddenly thrown open to the wind. Friends of mine have felt it too. A young mother sits down after her child sleeps, only to find her heart empty. A young man in a new apartment surrounded by furniture but unable to feel at home. An office worker walking home late, watching his shadow stretch across the pavement, was pierced by a loneliness deep in the bones. Perhaps you too have felt this. That restlessness is the first call of inner birth, a stirring beneath the surface of daily life, where the most hidden parts of you begin to speak. It is not a moment of enlightenment. It is the slow peeling of the mask, the courage to face the darkness you once pretended to forget. The question is no longer, how do I return to the old peace? But rather, do I have the courage to go into the dark, to come out brighter, stronger, even if it costs me comfort, safety, and the illusions I once held? If you are still here, listening, feeling the undercurrent rise, know that you are ready. On the other side of this discomfort lives a quiet power, a force that nothing can restrain. Only when you dare to step into the dark do you truly begin the journey of transformation. In the next part, I will tell you about ordinary moments. The silence, the small gestures that open a door into new light for your life. Not through grand action, but by being still enough to hear yourself change daily. True transformation has never been a smooth road, and it is never the story of those who always know exactly what to do. It begins in the clumsy, messy days. The mornings when you wake up late, pillow marks still on your face, rushing around the house looking for your keys, making coffee only to realize the water has run out, then standing frozen in front of the fridge, unable to remember what you were about to do. Maybe you too once promised yourself to slow down, to care for yourself, to meditate every evening for an hour. But when night came, you just pulled the blanket close and scrolled through TikTok until your eyes gave in. I once laughed at myself, looking back through my online orders. There were so many little things I had bought in a rush to relieve stress, things meant as gifts to myself, yet never once used. There were nights I tried to change my life, with plans to meditate, to write in a journal, to make a cup of tea. But 5 minutes later, I was on my feet again. Deadline calling, the washing machine beeping, clothes still piled from 3 days ago. Sometimes I thought, if only I had a remote to turn off my brain for just a few minutes. But the next morning still came. I still had to get up, go to work, and pretend I was fine. In those messy, ordinary moments, I realized I was not an exception. Maybe you are a student who borrowed books only to use them as a laptop stand. Maybe you are a young mother who fell asleep beside your child without knowing when. Or maybe you are the office worker who keeps saying, "Tomorrow I will quit," while tomorrow never comes. Modern life leaves all of us with small failures, with plans that never fully unfold. Instead of blaming myself for these things, I learned to look at my life with gentler eyes. Sometimes it was enough to take a deep breath, to sit with myself and admit, today I slipped again, my mind ran wild again, but it is okay. That is when I saw that chaos is not the enemy of transformation. It is the soil where change quietly takes root. From that acceptance, I began to grow little by little. Enough to wake each morning still willing to take the next step, still believing I was becoming someone I could be proud of. So if you too have had these drifting moments, remember, you are not lost. Every bit of disorder, every small self-mockery, every awkward failure is fertile ground, feeding a new stream of life within you. All it asks is that you be honest, that you be gentle with yourself. Then the seed of transformation will rise on its own. Something strange happens when you begin to hold on to your own life energy. The world outside suddenly looks different. Not because life itself has changed, but because your inner gaze has shifted. The things that once pulled you in, social media, the race for achievements, the quick shopping trips to feel okay, suddenly lose their shine. They feel shallow, almost fake. You begin to see that most of what once kept you restless, always afraid of falling behind, was only powder and paint over a life repeating the same old scripts. I remember one morning. Instead of reaching for my phone the moment I woke up, I simply sat still and looked out the window. The city was still busy, cars are still humming, but in the pale light of daybreak, something raw and real appeared. And at that moment, I realized that most of the things that made me anxious, most of the things I was afraid to miss, were only noise. Background noise, carefully designed to keep me from ever sitting long enough to hear myself. Have you ever felt that? An afternoon unplugged from your phone, a walk down the street with no headphones, no music, no destination, and suddenly the world was not as fast as you thought, not as dramatic as the headlines, not as brutal as the ads, not as glamorous as the Instagram feed. That is when you truly begin to see through the matrix. Carl Jung once said, when life energy is no longer scattered, we begin to see the world as it really is, with false walls, with standards built not for us, but to control us. You start to notice the fragility in relationships that only live on the surface. You argue less. You care less about what others say. You stop chasing after group dramas. You begin to know clearly who is with you out of love and who only drifts through your story as a passing role. I once tried a social media detox. By the third day, what I missed was not the breaking news, but the feeling of having too much time, not knowing what to do with myself. And that too was precious. It forced me to choose more carefully what truly deserved my attention and what was only a product of a society built to consume it. The special thing is, when you step out of that cycle, you no longer feel lonely. In fact, your real connections deepen. Each bond feels whole, no chasing, no proving. I realized I no longer needed to constantly update, no longer needed an excuse to say no to an invitation just because I was tired. A friend once told me, after unplugging, I could not understand why those things ever felt so important. If you have ever felt that, if you have ever glimpsed the matrix, share it with me. Maybe an emoji or a single word, unplugged matrix, just to let me know you are not alone in this awakening. That shift is not just about consuming less, it opens a new vision. You no longer play a side role in someone else's script, you become the author of your own life. That is the moment you are strong enough to rebuild your values, clear enough never to step back into the old spiral. From here, the transformation moves into true depth, where all the energy you have been storing begins to rise like a new light, illuminating both your inner and outer world. Next, I will tell you how this new self takes form, not through grand gestures but through small, quiet changes, steady enough to free you forever from the old roles you once thought were yours. When you begin to hold on to your own life energy, small changes start to happen quietly inside you. You do not need to announce it to the world. No one else may notice this transformation but you. And yet, it is the most important turning point. Suddenly, you realize you no longer have to please everyone. You do not need to reply to every message right away. You do not need to explain your choices to anyone. One morning, you notice you no longer wait for reactions on social media. You are no longer swept away by the fear of being left behind. You can sit by the window, finish a book, or simply watch the clouds drift by, without feeling guilty for the time. Someone once said, the deepest freedom comes when you allow yourself not to justify every feeling, not to explain every action, just to live slowly enough to hear the rhythm of your own heart. I too once lived trying to prove myself, rushing to be part of every event, every network, every circle. Later, I discovered that value does not come from the number of times you show up, but from the depth of the moments where you are truly present. You may find yourself smiling more at small things, releasing the worry of how others see you. This lightness is not a flash of awakening. It is the sign of a clearer self quietly growing inside you. Carl Jung said that when energy is gathered instead of scattered, it becomes a hidden yet steady force. This independence does not shout. It does not need applause. It only needs you to know you are still moving forward, still strong enough to face the storms outside. If you have ever felt this, freedom from someone else's script, peace in being yourself without proving anything, hold on to it. It is the greatest reward for any deep journey of transformation. In the next part, I will share with you small, practical steps you can begin today. Ways to keep that inner light steady, even if the world around you remains just as messy as before. Maybe you are wondering, how do I hold on to that inner light when life is still crowded with deadlines, unanswered messages, rushed dinners, and the sound of the TV from the other room? The truth is, none of us is strong enough to stay awake every moment of every day. But just a few small rituals, practiced with care, can slow the spin of exhaustion and bring you back to yourself. The first step is to choose one small purpose, one habit you want to nurture, not to prove anything to anyone, but simply to feel the flow of life moving through you. It could be 10 minutes of journaling before bed, or a short walk each evening without your phone, listening only to the sound of your footsteps, the whisper of leaves falling. You will find that even one tiny ritual slows everything down, and your energy no longer leaks into the chaos outside. A friend of mine, a single mother, told me her ritual. Each night, after her child is asleep, she turns off the living room lights, lights a candle, and breathes deeply for 5 minutes. The toys are still scattered, the laundry is still undone, but at that moment, she remembered she was present. That is how she keeps her flame alive, while being mother, worker, and improviser of 1,000 surprises. If silence feels difficult, try a small white space each day, 3 to 5 minutes. No music, no phone, no explanation. If someone asks, simply smile and say, "I am resetting my brain." Believe me, no one will care much, and you will discover that silence is the rarest gift of modern life. The second step is learning to say no gently. You do not have to accept every invitation. You do not need to maintain the image of always being available. You do not have to reply instantly. A friend of mine, an engineer in Silicon Valley, often says, "Today, I am not the cheerful version of myself." People laugh and let it go. The truth is, we all have the right to step back, to choose our own timing. That is how you protect your energy, instead of acting in roles that were never yours. Create for yourself a small altar of purpose. It doesn't have to be sacred. It could be a family photo, a slip of paper with a favorite quote, a playlist known only to you. This becomes your anchor. Each time you feel lost, return to it, and you will find your heart grows calm again. Do not forget to honor the small victories. One night, you turned off your devices earlier than usual. One time you said no without guilt. One walk where you left your headphones behind. Or simply one quiet evening with a meal you cooked yourself. These tiny acts are proof you are growing, proof you are guarding yourself in the storm. There will be days when you slip, when you fall into old habits, scatter your thoughts, let temptation win. This is human. Do not punish yourself. Do not believe you are back at the start. Every time you return to silence, every time you remember, you can begin again. And that itself is a great step forward. This journey is not measured by perfect days. It is measured by the courage to return to yourself, even for a single breath in a weary day. If you are trying a small ritual, or even just turning off your phone before bed, leave me a sign, an emoji, a dot, or a simple word, "Here," so I know you are still walking this path, even while life is messy and deadlines chase you on your heels. And remember, you are not alone. Somewhere out there, in bright neighborhoods and quiet apartments, thousands of others are also learning to hold on to their life energy, day by day, minute by minute, breath by breath. None of us is perfect, but each of us deserves to touch that clear light within, the place where our true self is no longer shaped or defined by the world. Give yourself that gift every day, beginning with the smallest of things. Remember this: the emptiness you feel each morning is not your fault. It is a signal, a gentle reminder from within that your life energy has been scattered and your true self is waiting for you to return. Each time you pause, each time you take a deep breath and listen to your heartbeat, you are reclaiming an inner power that modern society would rather you forget. So what will you choose? To keep living by old habits, pulled into news feeds, deadlines, quick fixes that still leave you empty? Or step into true freedom, where you hold your own energy and each moment carries its real worth? You do not need to wait for a perfect day. You do not need a miracle from outside. It all begins with one small choice today: to look inward, to remember you still have strength, to guard your life energy alone. Carl Jung once said, "The most frightening thing is not failure. It is losing yourself in what only seems familiar." So today, what will you do with that power inside you? Stop for just 1 minute, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, who am I living for, and have I truly been myself? This is the very first step, the step that leads you out of the shadow and into the light that only you can give yourself.